Growing up on the coast of Oregon, hunting and fishing was a huge part of what we did. It brought food to the table and it brought fun adventures with friends and family. Really, it was getting outside first that brought me into the world of conservation that I learned about through college, studying wildlife biology at the University of Montana. And then I spent about a dozen years working for the feds all across the West, from grizzly bear projects in Alaska to pika surveys in North Cascades National Park to trapping lynx for radio collars in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. My name is Michael O'Casey. I'm the Director of Public Lands for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. I'm here in Southern Oregon today on the Klamath Refuge to do some duck hunting. The Klamath Marsh is a national flyway. Millions and millions and millions of ducks use this place year after year, and the Klamath is a really complex ecosystem, and wetlands like this are critical for the future of the Pacific Flyway. Historically, we had a lot of different wetlands across the country that harbored millions and millions of waterfowl and migratory birds. But over time, a lot of these places also had great value for settlers that would come in and begin to try to find a way to make a living in a rough place like the Great Basin country or over here in the Klamath Basin, where water was an essential form of life. And so over time, they created these farmed agricultural plots, and they would sometimes move creeks and valleys and put in fill and to provide for better farming at the expense sometimes of wetland habitat. And so this particular tract here was actually an agricultural field for many, many years. And then the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife purchased it and converted it into a wetland again. Oftentimes when you're hunting public lands across the West, you'll be looking at a place that's been, previously impacted and restored through federal and state and private dollars. I do see a sense of hope when I look at these wetlands and when I look at the Klamath Basin, and there's hundreds and hundreds of folks that are working in the Klamath Basin to restore habitat and find a win-win solution. The Klamath River was one of the largest river restoration projects in the country recently by the removal of the 4 dams in an attempt to bring back salmon habitat. But it does give me hope that there's focus on creating working landscapes and continue to have the farming culture while managing for restoration of habitat at the same time. Places like this on the Klamath Refuge don't just exist. They're here because people care about them and because federal funding and state dollars are behind them. And at TRCP, we're working to make sure that those dollars are here to put on the ground for habitat restoration. My favorite part about hunting is being able to spend time in the field and you really connect with the natural world. I think it's also about community and friends, and having my kids getting older, it's really fun to get out there with them and see their eyes light up when you get the chance to see your first bull elk bugling. So yesterday I just got back from a chucker hunt with my oldest son. We processed the birds together. And he's a little squeamish about it, and that makes sense, but it was important for me to make sure that he took part in that before he took part in the meal, just because there's a sense of honoring the animal and making sure that they understand the full concept. To me, it brings us back to a better tie to nature and a better tie to the food that we put on the table. From the enjoyment of the sport to the processing to the time around the table, these places are what make that possible. And without wild country and abundant habitat, we won't be able to do that. So in many ways, my job is bringing this kind of a landscape and these kind of opportunities into the halls of Congress. We may not all be duck hunters, we may not all be out there chasing pheasants with our bird dogs, but we all enjoy getting outside and spending time in fresh air. And public lands provide that opportunity across the West and across the entire country. The story of conservation from the hunting and fishing angle is one of hope, in the sense that in the early 1900s, Oregon had to truck 18 Rocky Mountain elk into the northeast part of the state in order to have the robust 70,000 Rocky Mountain elk herds we have today. We have millions and millions of ducks that use the Pacific Flyway. That opportunity is here because of thoughtful leaders like Theodore Roosevelt, and continues today because of groups like WorkSharp and TRCP who continue to advocate for that and to make sure that those voices are heard in the halls of Congress and that funding is available. So when you get back to the tough question of what does this place look like in 50 years for success, I think it's a continuation of what those folks saw in the vision, so that we can not only have abundant economy, but also an environment that supports that economy to be able to go out and harvest these birds and find these big game in the pockets of the West, maintain the habitat that they require.